More than 50 federal agents descended upon Lower Manhattan earlier this week in an immigration raid targeting local street vendors. DHS said the agents arrested 9 undocumented men. The raid drew swift pushback from the public. Protesters were gathering around, recording the agents and demanding answers. A day after all of this went down, New York Attorney General Letitia James rolled out a new online portal where people can share photos and videos of immigration enforcement happening across the state. Joining us now to discuss all of this is New York Congressman Adriano Espaillat. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I just first want to get your reaction to this raid that we saw here in New York on Canal Street. What message do you think was being sent, if there was a particular message? And do you think this is the start of an escalation of immigration raids here in the city, as we have seen in other parts of the country?
I believe it's the start of an escalation, yes. I think that for the most part, what the enforcement tactics have been somewhat targeted to individuals so far. But this raid shows that they're coming to New York. I was in Chicago yesterday, and I saw what they're doing there. And perhaps, I got the feeling that maybe they're experiencing their model. They're in other smaller cities to see whether or not it works. And then they're going to come into the biggest cities like New York is.
And how do you think New Yorkers should be bracing themselves or preparing themselves for this, whether they are immigrants or members of the immigrant community here or undocumented workers, and at the same time, New York citizens and residents who live here and don't want to see this happening in their city? And do you think it's going to escalate because of the mayoral race, depending on who wins?
Well, first, I think that there are things that we can do.
Like?
As a city. We could develop rapid response teams. We could record, as the Attorney General asked that we do. The schools could have a soft lockdown protocol, safety corridors, perhaps even virtual learning for students that won't come into school. These are the kinds of practices, best practices that I saw in Chicago. I think that we need to tighten up our game and develop these strategies because we're going to be ready. We got to be ready. This is New York City, and in many ways, it will be a showdown. Yes.
How are you making sure that some of your constituents who maybe aren't able to follow mainstream English-speaking news, who have at times been targeted by mis- and disinformation campaigns? As we know, Latino communities throughout New York and the country have been at times, especially in politically charged moments. Have you had conversations with your constituents about knowing their rights, what
Absolutely.
they can do, the steps they can take, properties that federal agents cannot enter, whatever it may be? Are people doing that sort of preparatory work to make sure that they're safe?
We did it when the enforcement began. We're going to have to go back to it, the do's and don'ts, consolidated legal services, that they know exactly where to go for legal services is another strategy. But this is all a response to the conditions. Unmasked or masked ICE agents throwing people on the ground like they did to Senator Alex Padilla, a sitting senator of the state of California.
They're smashing people's car windows.
Chemicals.
They're waiting outside of churches.
Yes.
Going into people's homes.
Going into people's homes. Their chemicals are being thrown, tear gas, of course, the weaponization of the Justice Department. These are all characteristics of a dictatorship. The Trump administration is behaving like a military junta government. And these are the strategies that we've seen that have been used throughout history to repress people, to the degree that is to no one's surprise that he may want to seek a third term. So this is the state of affairs in America.
Well, there is an interesting point in Donald Trump accepting this donation, $130 million. Defense Department is supposedly going to accept this donation from a Trump donor that would only fund about half a day of troops' pay,
right,
but as a way to bypass the shutdown. So it's of questionable legality. What do you make of there being concern for the optics of not paying the troops? And there's still plenty of money to fund ICE and to fund this massive surveillance operation.
And the ballroom.
The ballroom. But the government, when is the shutdown going to be over?
The priorities for this administration are upside down. And so you don't pay the Army, you don't pay the men and women of the armed forces but you have massive funding for these masked ICE agents that are slamming people on the floor, moms and working people. On the other hand, you really don't care about the shutdown. You're making believe it's not even there. And so you're gallivanting around the world, and people are not going to get their checks. And so this is a crisis moment. And I believe that they will come to New York and take it to another level. And for that reason, I went to Chicago yesterday to see what they're doing so that we can be ready and prepared.
Well, so when do you think, what's your projection on when the government might reopen? I feel like it's becoming Groundhog Day around here. We have on a lawmaker, and it's another week of, basically getting, be in your district. But Mike Johnson not calling the House to session.
That's
what do you foresee here?
I foresee that when the government tries to take your Medicaid away from you, or try to hike your premiums, double or triple your premiums, so that if you're sick, if you have cancer, if you have diabetes, if you have a cardiovascular serious problems, like many Americans do, that you're going to be able to afford your health care. I believe that that's when we have a discussion when we can bring government back to work. I don't want Johnson or Trump to steal your Medicaid. I will fight for you so you can keep your Medicaid. And that's what this is all about.
I just want to follow up on one thing that Elise and you were talking about for a second, which is about Trump finding private donations to pay the military. As you mentioned, Congress has not been in session. I presume there would be enough votes to find money just to pay the military, right? If Congress were in session?
Of course, and there are sensible things that we can do, but they refuse to come to the table. They refuse to talk about health care. They want to make believe that this is not a problem, when in fact everybody knows that if you're sick and you don't have the health care that you need, you could die or you could lose everything in a couple of months.
Congressman, before you go, I have to ask, because Eamon and I have asked you this question in the past. Given what you have seen ICE become under this administration, the massive influx of cash, the military-grade weapons that they are purchasing, the way in which the communities that you represent have been horrified by their actions, at this stage, do you think ICE as an agency should still exist?
I think that they should be restructured totally. This is urban warfare, what they're doing. It is unacceptable. There has to be some level of enforcement in every department, but not a masked agent without a first name and a last name and a shield number knocking on your door. You don't know whether they're trying to rob you or kidnap you. This is where we are right now in America.
Can it be reformed?
It could be dramatically reformed, absolutely.
Okay, Congressman, thank you so much for being with us tonight.